We have with us Dr. Lakshmi Kumar. Dr. Lakshmi Kumar is a well-known educationist and intercultural coach. Her expertise spans from establishing quality education, quality schools, building teams, developing educational processes, and initiating best practices for both schools and higher education. Dr. Kumar is the founder director of the Orchid School Pune. As the founder director of Orchid School and the visionary for educational process that is meaningful and relevant, she strives to bring teaching practices, methods, curriculum in alignment with today's generation of learners. Dr. Kumar specializes in training culture workers, mainly from student teachers, social workers, lawyers, nurses, to work with multicultural communities. She has been a coordinator and academic supervisor for Student India project based in Orebro University for last 25 years. Dr. Kumar is a certified cross-cultural training consultant for CARTIS, Global Excellence, Global Bond, and Language Cultural worldwide. She has trained international assignee for USA, Australia, UK, Sweden, Canada, China, Japan, and elsewhere on cross-cultural competence and business processes. So we welcome you, Dr. Kumar. It's a pleasure for us to have you on the platform, and we request you to kindly enlighten us with the education industry cooperation, which can make a change in our education sector. Dr. Kumar, you are not audible. Dr. Kumar, you are not audible. I think you are on mute.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah,
Loud and
sorry.
clear. No problem.
Yeah,
No
7 months into it, we still haven't really mastered the art of getting onto the classroom, something or the other is off and on. So thank you so much for this invitation and opportunity with the August audience to share some thought
It's our
processes.
pleasure.
Thank you. So I just want to kind of put on a presentation. Am I? Yeah, I
Neha,
can
please.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you see this slideshow?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So the topic given to me is very interesting, or rather, I made a choice to talk on industry and schools connect. Uh, Partly it comes from my experience with also the higher education. I've been part of my own organizations, the engineering technical school, and as you could see that I've been working a lot with business processes as a parallel passion. What I felt was that a lot of core and crucial skills and exposures seem to be kept in the arena of higher education, whereas it should have been considered introduction at the school level. And we are doing bits and pieces of it. But I think a systematic framework is what is missing. And a very conscious mapping is what is missing. And that if we could leverage what we are doing with what is required, so this whole bottleneck at the higher education gets very minimized. So from that point of view, I thought I will share some of my thoughts on at school level, how do we bring in the connections for the industry? I thought the good starting point for me would be to look at the NEP and three highlights that NEP talks about, or the reforms in school education. We're all very familiar with it, but just to make a contextual connect to what we're going to talk about is, of course, we have, I think, ever since the 21st century, we've been talking about the 21st century skills in terms of integrating it in the classroom. Uh, the mathematical thinking, the computational thinking, and the scientific temper. The second point of focus that I want to make connection with is this not rigid separation between the art and science. And I'm so glad that NEP talks about it, because as you know, today in our workspaces, whether it is in our leadership positions, school context, or service industry, including school, can be considered as that, or in a manufacturing context, there is no separation between this is the science part of our work and this is the math part of our work and this is the aesthetics part of our work. You know, it is a culmination, it is a holistic ecosystem, and I think it's time that we blur the boundaries of the subjects. We've done it in a little bit of a tokenistic way with what we call the um, integrated project system or thematic project. But that again becomes a textual academic discourse. So I'm glad that the vocational element of inclusion is talked about in the reform. And of course, the third one is very important for my talk is the vocational integration from class 6 onwards. And I know historically in schools we have done vocational integration again to in a more aesthetics or art program of candle making or a mat weaving or those kind of very minimalistic, knowing very well that a lot of children who are in the mainstream school may or may not use that, but that also again gets treated as an art program rather than from the art point of view, what's the science element and what's the mathematical element and what's the language element. So I think I'm glad that there is a mention of that. uh, Very important for us as teachers to or educators to recognize that we have some students who are true scholars and love learning for learning's sake, or the content is very inspiring and they just love it. But we must recognize that we do have a lot of students who are immensely practical, especially when the critical thinking and questioning and to some extent rebellious phase of our students life settles in, they don't want to waste time and energy learning something they don't see it as relevant to their lives. For example, just 2 days before, I saw a very interesting post by a parent of my school. The child is working in the garden with some vermicompost and making pots for new plant. And she wrote that a special celebration after Hindi exam got over. And I think that's the irony of our system, that when children don't see that there is a connect, there is a real reason for this, then they transact it as a tickable agenda, that this is something that you just need to get it done with, and then you do more fun things. So therefore, making real world connections can engage students and help them set goals, and that's where I'm bringing the industry connect. uh, we also have realized that the real world connect, and that where will you use this knowledge, where will you use this skill, where will you use this learning, is when the students seem to be more engaged. Not everyone, but they see the connection. But let's remember that we ourselves have not been much exposed to what I would call the real world application workspaces. Just like many engineering professors that I experienced in my college, they have done their, graduation, post-graduation, probably doctoral program, and they have probably been inside the campus and perhaps to the library, and maybe a mandate of a 2 months, what they call the industry experience, and they are professors. And that's how our journey has been, that we have done our undergrad or postgrad, and we've done our teacher certification. Bingo, we are in the classroom, but very little of how does it work. Our world is not an extremely expanded experience based how does it work questions. Hence we also reduce the real world applications to very Google researched, that this is where you can use the centrifugal force, this is where you can use a Charles law. So I think we also need to realize, and this is one of the potential professional development for us. When we did, we have this thrice a year students online feedback for our teachers. Um, and most of our teachers score very high on relationship aspect, subject competency, and compassion, approach, everything. Two questions that almost our entire school team scored low was, especially some time ago, was a technology integration, a meaningful technology integration. Because today children don't want you to just do another PowerPoint. But the most important and the second important question was that my teacher does not make real life connect to make meaning for why I'm learning what I'm learning. And I remember incorporating that in the lesson plan, that for every concept that you teach, that you've got to have some kind of where is it getting used when the child graduates, where can it be found as relevant knowledge space. Uh, for us, I think the industry connect becomes even more relevant and valid because we know that 78% of all available jobs will require education beyond textbooks and high school. That doesn't necessarily mean few years degree, but something beyond, that what is that something beyond, that is something that we need to decode. Understanding that the changing future of work is largely going to be kind of divided between the digital skill and the STEM skills. But the third and the most important skill is the transferable skills and capabilities, is what an industry exposure, or what I would call the school industry connect, can bring in. Uh, it seems like it's easier said than done. The first and foremost obstacle that we need to get over is this mindset. Our entire mindset is on the fact that, we almost drive the whole year to finishing the curriculum or the syllabus. I remember, I see even when my team leaders are discussing in their academic team meeting, one of the foremost question is, are you in line with the timeline of the syllabus? So when our whole focus of an academic year is about, it's almost like a sole destination. And then there is a milestone, which is the assessment, the exams, as you call it. Each system has just reinvented this vicious wheel and called it different names, but it's almost like all our life, school life, converges into this two major milestones. So what happens is that assessments are the focus, and so there is no real urgency to teach beyond the textbooks, or there is even no major mandate, because it's almost like a student saying, hey, exam mein aane wala hai kya? I remember when I was teaching my own daughter for the 10th grade, and I'm very passionate about social science, history, and that was a while ago. And that was the time I was trying to explain to her, for example, how UN seemed to be defunct, when the Iraq war and the Security Council really was not really given the power or the even the ability to veto. And I was getting into the context, and I remember my daughter telling me, "Mama, teach me what is in the book. After the exams, we will sit and I will learn about it." And I think it's a very sad statement of our education affair. And she said, "If I write all this, I won't get marks." So I think we really need to break these shackles of education if we genuinely want to give our students a meaningful learning connect. Another impediment for connecting with the industry is that we somehow believe that we don't have access to the resources, because again, which is a complete blindfold behavior, because my God, we are sitting with parents who come from a real labor force, real workforce. I mean, and such a diversity. You talk about, the entire business accounting processes. You have business entrepreneurs as parents. You talk about service providers, service industries of hospitality, medical healthcare, and you have a huge ecosystem of parents. Then you have the IT and IT infra industries. You have, the real estate and construction industry, and you have all the other in between, medium scale to large scale to banking to financial services. You have an entire ecosystem of parent access, but we don't learn to connect the dots. That if I'm teaching today something in the entrepreneurial program, let's say the grade 11 and 12, the commerce program, it's our whole focus is on completing the syllabus, doing PT1, PT2, or we have those no PT1 for grade 11, but it almost seems like the whole focus is for preparing for the 12th. But how about including regular invitation lectures? And I will come to that, what all we can do to connect with the industry. But the point is to recognize that we are sitting with a huge repository of resources, human resources, industry connect. And we know that all we need to do as school system is to snap our fingers. Parents are more than happy to deliver the services. We don't even have to go beyond. But these are invisible, but an extremely tangible resource. So that's another thing that we need to very actively dig for. And of course, the rural schools and schools in the hinterland don't have similar access, but by God, they have other kind of probably natural resource access or much more real life challenging questions to deal with and to problem solving methods. So it's about getting over the mindset block. uh, Actually, industry experts can inspire students in a way more than uh, what we can imagine. And we don't have to wait for our students to be at higher levels or what they call the senior levels. We can start at a very very young age, and for us it's important to create this huge interest panel for our students. So I want to kind of give some guidelines on how we can use the industry connect is to help kids focus exactly on what they want to do. And it is our responsibility to provide as educators. Many times we organize field trip and we connect it to the content or the curriculum. But we rarely talk about the workforce and what skills do they need to have, what attitude they need to have, and what are the personal attributes you require if you're going to working with a farming industry, or if you're going to work with, let's say, a hospital, if you're going to work with people interface, if you're going to work with nearly no people interface, if you're going to work behind the digital world. So that's important for us to create this bridge between what they experience and how do we make uh, meaning out of it. And we have all seen this, that lockdown has given us other kinds of opportunities which a typical school day has not been able to provide. We suddenly have a possibility of field trips, expert talks, webinars, and name it. So we can virtually connect, and thankfully, the travel no more is a requirement. That restriction is removed. And when you want to make this industry connect, what is important is to ask the students what is that problem that they want to solve. Last evening, the webinar talked about very beautifully, moderated by Sita. One of the crucial question is beyond the education agenda of learning, writing an exam, and graduating out of school, what is the purpose? I think this is important for us if you really want to drive the connect of real work life after school is what is a real problem that you want to solve. Um, and with this, we surely would be able to broaden the students' experiences when all they know is sometimes one industry. That's again another very sad state of our school affairs, is that we still believe that large community still believes that when you graduate out of school, in order to be successful, you either end up as an engineer or a doctor. So it's almost about most of the students know. I'm mainly talking about the urban, middle class, upper middle class, and upper class aspiring students, are largely focusing on these two. But we need to bring the conversations to help them experience that there are more popular professions, there are more cool professions, there are more challenging professions, there are more satisfying professions, and it's a huge range. How about almost having it in your ecosystem every month, one day in a month, you bring diverse professionals to have conversation with students. And today, I remember having this amazing designer, uh, addressing our students, and she suddenly demystified the fact that you got to know only English to be an amazing designer. And she really mapped how, in order to be this, where do you source out your fabric from? I'm talking about the fashion designer. And suddenly she took us to Rajasthan, where you've got to have the local language or some kind of a language proficiency to connect with. You got to sit with them, you got to have interpersonal skills, you got to have an attitude of respect for people who have other kind of skills. And that you then need to know in terms of how do you transport it back to, let's say, your workspace. And you're working with entire group of karigars who are making amazing garments. And she said that my London School of Fashion Design didn't teach me much that I really needed to learn once I began to be a fashion designer. And I'm talking about that kind of horizon broadening. And that's how you really help students find out their passion. Another one, for example, we are steering right now is that our students have to make a short film right now in the entrepreneurial program on actually interviewing someone who's got impacted terribly in terms of the business process during the pandemic time. Uh, Before we focus on the film production, just look at all the skills that they need to have, including a conversation, including a language proficiency, including an interview skill, including when to take a pause. All these are skill sets that are very important. And I think when an entrepreneur comes and talks about it, our children really get to have more like a hands-on learning. I think Industry Connect help our students to think beyond and about their future and the possibilities that are available for them. And the irony of our profession right now is we are teaching our students for skills for which there are no jobs available. Uh, the more we collaborate with the industry, because industry is dynamic, the workspace is dynamic, they don't have time for pondering, they have to quickly adapt. The agility requirement is so high at workspace, and the more we bring them to the classroom, we can bridge the gap between the curriculum and the real work life or a real workspace requirement and the textbook conversations. And this, of course, builds trust between teachers and students. The minute you say, "Hey, you know what, today what I'm going to talk about, these are the spaces in which your plan, you would be able to apply. The students sit up and say, she's going to bring value that's not in the textbook. She's going to bring a diverse learning tool that's not in my textbook. And with this we're also communicating that I of course want performance, I want data, but more than anything I want my students to leave the classroom feeling very, very inspired. I remember a sound engineer coming and talking to my students. uh, our students get very, very impressed when a sound engineer has earrings and a nice pony and a beard. He looks very cool and he's working. And suddenly, when this guy stood up and talked about what knowledge space you require, what kind of skill set you require, and he talked about attitudes of that you don't have an office time, especially if you're going to be part of major music festivals. You are there the whole time. There is no break. There is no, lunch, and there is no like, okay, I am now it's over and I need to pack up and go. So you can imagine the kind of real life context that they give. And of course, please bring that real life connect. Is the only way to do is to bring people who work in the real life context. That's the industry experts, the classroom. So I just have few ideas to throw because I know that I need to close it in 3 minutes. uh, Field visits. Uh, every year, actively look for field visits that really showcase workspace too. Whether it's a research lab or it is a path lab in a hospital, or whether it is the research lab for color pigments, or a farm where they are making using the molasses to make alcohol. Name it, you have huge array to talk about. And live industry chats that I talked about, with especially with the digital learning, you just don't have to think about how to bring that person. And you can have personalized sessions with connecting a student's interest with someone who works with that. And similarly, career explorer and ask the expert. And very nice thing that we have done, from grade 5 and 6 on, is once a year, one day you must follow your parent on a shadow experience. And children realize that all work life is not fun and play. There are a lot of boring meetings, there are a lot of boring conversations, and that you're constantly sitting and listening to maybe other boring presentations, but that's real life too. So I think it gives them a lot of insight into what it is. And then slowly increase it to maybe 1 week, when you're in the higher secondary, just a baniya dukan, go and sit down and write how he is calculating his everyday sale, to maybe how is the window display happening in a nice boutique. Find ways in which students really can have 1 week to 1 month to, you can expand the time frame. And if you as an educator has worked in other industry, other workspace, like I have been working a lot with cultural competence, and I know that our students are going to be part of a global workforce. And how cultures operate, while technology is the same, that if you bring it transported from Germany to India, But it is not just the technology, it is the human interface that finally defines the success of a story, of an entrepreneurial journey, or any kind of an industry. So bring in your own skills or share your skills to expand the world of our students. So, yeah, that's what I have.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It is indeed a, very enlightened session. And I would say that the second most talked topic in the education sector after NEP is 21st century skills, and hope that this education industry cooperation and connect, we can actually enhance this 21st century skills of the students, like critical thinking.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you very much, ma'am, for sparing your valuable time and for this beautiful speech and presentation. It's a pleasure for all of us to have you in the forum. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, Pankaj. I
Thank you so
hope
much.
it made some relevance and
Very
contextual.
relevant. Very
Thank
relevant,
you.
ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Good day, ma'am.